Hello and good morning and welcome to another edition of the Blood Red Bulletin. I am Emmet Gates and today I'm joined by my fellow Liverpool.com writer Dave Comerford. And Dave, the January transfer window was slowly ticking down. As we know, Liverpool haven't really did any further business after signing Cody Gapco. So obviously there's rumours and we see speculation every single day about Liverpool are interested in this player and that player, but ultimately nothing really happens. The latest player to be linked is Chelsea's Mason Mount, and with his contract running into its last 18 months, there's the speculation. I think there is or contract extension talks going on between Mount and Chelsea, but from reports, it doesn't seem to be going that well. Um, is he a player that you think that Jurgen Klopp and Liverpool should take a look at? Obviously, a January deal probably unlikely, I would say, given Chelsea would demand a significant amount of money to sign him. Um, but in general, do you think Mount is a player that maybe Liverpool should look at in terms of a summer move, or what is your opinion on Mount as a player in general?
Well, it first of all, it definitely would be one for the summer because the sort of angle Liverpool have on this is, like you say, with his contract running down, they can go in there in the summer and pick him up for a reduced fee because Chelsea would obviously look at that and think if we're not going to be able to sign he's not going to sign a new contract, then let's make sure we make a good amount of money off him. I think as well with Chelsea, you look at the amounts of money they're spending right now. People have different views, I'd say, on how much financial fair play regulations and the like are actually enforced, but you certainly feel as if with that spending speed there are going to have to be significant sales, otherwise surely something would have to be done about that. So that's a factor too. And I mean, we're not going to be talking about sort of 30 million still, even with that, we still be talking about a very large amount of money, but one that is viable, I think, for a sort of 24-year-old English player who's won the Champions League. And I think definitely splits opinion among Chelsea fans, and by extension, certainly on social media, would probably do the same with Liverpool supporters. But he has achieved a lot in his career. I think the big one would be kind of making that a sort of team of the season when Chelsea won the Champions League. So I think if you can get the best version of Mount, he's an excellent player, really. And I feel as if he might be almost better utilised, find a better home at Liverpool than he does at Chelsea. So from that angle, I wouldn't be too opposed to it. I was quite excited, I suppose, when the links came out, because I think he's someone who could possibly thrive under Jurgen Klopp. The problem for me is that from what I've read, because I wrote about Mount the other day, and from what I've read, his demands and the reason this whole Chelsea negotiation is going on so long is because he wants to be one of their highest earners. And right now, if you look at it, that puts him somewhere around 300k a week. And realistically, Liverpool can't be paying him that kind of money. It's only a good deal if you're paying him quite a fair bit less than that, you'd have to say. So that is the massive snag with this one, I think, unfortunately. But I just can't see him accepting, a reduced wage at Liverpool compared to what he wants at Chelsea, because I don't really see kind of the incentive for him to do that. So from that angle, I don't necessarily think this one will happen, as much as Liverpool might have identified him as a possible cheaper Bellingham alternative if that one doesn't come off.
Yeah, and I mean, you're talking there, if he wants to be one of Chelsea's highest paid earners and around the 300k a week region, like that's Mohamed Salah money at Liverpool. Virgil van Dijk, more even than what Virgil van Dijk makes at Liverpool. So you do have to say it's highly unrealistic that Liverpool are going to pay Mount, that type of money, to kind of be in that stratosphere of Liverpool's pays, weekly salary bracket. It's not really likely going to happen, is it? As you say, it would only really happen if he came in on a significantly lower wage. But yeah, I think it's an interesting one in the respect that, do you think he would fit into Jurgen Klopp's 4-3-3? Because anytime I watch Chelsea, they're either playing a 4-2-3-1 or 4-3-2-1, and it's not that those aren't really systems that Klopp utilizes that often. So I mean, would Mount fit in a Klopp system?
Well, it's hard to say sort of definitively what system Mount or any Chelsea player plays, and I think because of the amount of not only game to game switching, but in game switching, you know, in possession, out of possession switching, all things like that. You know, it's very hard to keep track of. I think that's probably helped him in terms of developing versatility. I think he could fit in quite nicely actually, into one of the three midfield positions on the basis that, you know, you look at these kind of attack minded midfielders and, you know, but someone like Harvey Elliott, for example, um, struggles with the defensive side, not because of a lack of effort, but because he just doesn't necessarily have that kind of understanding and that ability to kind of read the game, you know, position himself. And obviously physicality plays a part in it too. So I think the strength of Mount is that, you know, is that defensive work really. And that I think would make him quite effective in addition to what he could offer going forward. And I think it's going to be interesting with sort of if Bellingham comes in or if it is Mount that comes in. You know, these are players who have put up kind of really good numbers in terms of you know, attacking output, goals and assists. Whether Mount has had that recently, I'm not so sure, but certainly Bellingham and Mount at his best. And is that going to be something that is kind of prevalent at Liverpool too, or is it going to be more kind of what we've seen with, you know, players like Wijnaldum or even Keita to an extent where they come into the club with those numbers, but then their role is a bit different and they don't necessarily get to do that. So it might be sort of a different version of Mount hypothetically than what we see at Chelsea. But I think, you know, like I said, my concern is to do with the practicalities, the wages. It isn't really to do with the stylistic fit because I do think he ticks the boxes for Liverpool there.
Yeah. I mean, as you do make a good point there. You know, the player that perhaps Liverpool buy isn't necessarily the player that they kind of morph into, or you know, they change as they come into the club, and Klopp utilizes them in a different way, so they kind of turn into a different player than the player that they were when Liverpool originally bought them. So, yeah, you make a very good point there. And so another player that Liverpool have been continuously linked with, and perhaps a tad more realistic, is Fiorentina's Sofyan Amrabat, and the sporting director Joe Barone has come out this week and said basically that Fiorentina are going to keep him until the end of the season. Is Amrabat someone that you think Liverpool should take a second look at in the summer, or do you think this is the kind of deal that they kind of need to get in now, and come the summertime they'll probably forget about him and move on to other targets?
Well, to be honest, I'm not too sort of enthused by this one because, you know, we saw yesterday that Bajcetic signed a new deal. It seems like that is the route Liverpool want to go down in terms of defensive midfield. I think given the lack of resources available, or certainly the fact that so many of them will be moved towards that Bellingham transfer, I think Liverpool will probably try that as a solution, having Fabinho and Bajcetic as their two defensive midfielders, and then probably buy two more who play a little bit more advanced. So that would probably shut the door on a move from Rabat. And I think, you know, my concern with him has always been, you know, he had this amazing World Cup, but he's playing in his own half at the World Cup, you know, sort of playing really deep in a team that was kind of just very defensively disciplined and playing on the counter attack. And I'm not sort of knocking that, but I think it's very different to what he'd have to do at Liverpool. And that's why I've always been kind of too reluctant to suggest that he'd be kind of a perfect fit, because I've not really seen him necessarily playing in that more expansive setup. I mean, maybe you could speak to that a little bit more, Emmet. But yeah, I don't think I personally don't think now we'll see Amrabat or indeed any other kind of number 6 signing come in. I think Liverpool have, with that contract yesterday, which I'm sure will be kind of a implicit sign of their backing, you know, hefty pay rise to Bajcetic, all that. I think they've kind of given us a bit of a hint about what their plan is for that position.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you there. You know, Morocco obviously played a different way. You know, completely different. It's a contrast between the way Liverpool play, or the Liverpool, you know, when they're at their best, they want to play. They want to be on the foot front, you know, attacking from the top. And Morocco are completely different. They were entrenched in their own half majority of the time. And even if Fiorentina, that's kind of why Amrabat surprised me, because he is a good player and he was very good at Verona. But at Fiorentina to a lesser extent are kind of like Liverpool. They, Vincenzo Italiano, the Fiorentina coach, likes to play expansive football, 4-3-3. And Amrabat did kind of struggle for Fiorentina. Even with, lesser players around him. But the thinking was the same, attack, and he did kind of struggle. In saying that, since he's come back from the World Cup, Italiano has actually shifted his system to a 4-2-3-1 and put him in a double pivot to try and get the most out of him. And the results have been so-so. Fiorentina, they lost to Torino last weekend, and they lost to Roma the week previously. So he hasn't made a great difference, even though the system has been shaped around him now in Florence. So yeah, I do think that this is kind of it's a boat that he may have to miss. And come the summertime, I think, as you say, Liverpool will move on to the other targets. And I do think that opportunity is now past. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see if Liverpool, do make another attempt, or if they just forget about Amrabat come the summer. But I'm more inclined to agree with yourself. I think it's done and dusted.
Yeah, and with Amrabat, there's a couple of other clubs that have been linked. I think Tottenham and Atletico Madrid are the ones that spring to mind from what I've sort of read. And you'd have to say that based on sort of what we saw with Morocco, and obviously they're not kind of maybe as defensive as that, but based on that, he could be a better fit for those kind of teams potentially, sort of Simeone and Conte. And I do think we probably will see him get a move. But yeah, I don't think it's going to be to Liverpool.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think he'd be a perfect fit for Simeone at Atletico, and not necessarily Klopp at Liverpool. But that's all we've time for today. Dave, thanks very much for joining me, and we hope we'll see you all again soon and keep up to date with all the content on Liverpool.com and the Blood Red YouTube channel. So thanks for tuning in.